How's it going, everyone? And welcome to Animal Talk Podcast with me, your host, Ryne Ferguson. Well, it's definitely been a really interesting week. We went over to level 2 lockdown, which means we could open up our park. And I will say that getting people back in and getting those guests through the doors has been quite interesting and quite challenging, having the new normal around. Making sure that everybody social distances and make sure they use hand sanitizer and just trying to make it all work has been quite challenging, but really great to have everybody back around and making sure that everybody has a good time. And seeing a lot of our work that we've done over the lockdown period now being enjoyed by our guests is really rewarding. Adding to that, over the last few days, I've had a few new additions to the household, which I've been looking after temporarily, which I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that at a later stage. But they've been keeping me very busy and trying to find time to make sure that I can edit the podcast and get it out on time has been quite challenging, but it's going to work and things are going to go real well. And I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to somebody who has played a very big role in my chats about behavior and understanding behavior and bird training. So it's just been really great being able to chat to him and sort of toss up some ideas. So I'm really excited to introduce you to Josh. Thanks for coming onto the show, Josh.
Hey, Ryan, how are you?
Good. How are you going?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good. So I have a huge question for you, and it's one I didn't speak to you about. How do you pronounce your surname?
Mazza.
Oh, there you go.
It's Italian. A lot of people, I guess the official Italian pronunciation is Mazza, but everyone in my family goes by Mazza. So
that's cool. I like it. So Josh, a question we get a lot in the industry, and one I'm putting out there every time when I interview someone is, what is your favorite animal?
Yeah, it is a great question. It's a tough one to answer, I would say. For me, I have a lot of favorite animals, I would say, but one that always comes back with me is vultures and kind of the whole group of them. Yeah.
Nice. I like vultures. Vultures are cool. And we have some really cool old world vultures in Africa, but North America and South America have some really cool New World vultures that I got to experience. Very different, but all very similar in some way.
Yeah, I think they kind of satisfy the same ecological role, but have taken sort of some different paths through evolution to get there. And I think that's one of the reasons why I find them so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. And I remember seeing them in the States when I was there. And I was shocked because here you're driving along and here's a whole bunch of black vultures on the side of the road eating something that was obviously hit by a car or whatever. And I was just thinking to myself, if I'm driving along the road in South Africa and I see a whole bunch of white-backed vultures on the side of the road, I'm going to be like swerving and stopping and like, what is going on? But in the States and probably by you guys, if you see vultures or the turkey vultures, you're not really concerned too much about them.
No, yeah, we still get a lot of casualties from, roads and things like that to them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they have a bad reputation, for people that aren't really into birds or even into animals that much. They're seen as, this bad omen or just kind of like pests and these unfortunately disgusting animals, I've heard people say. So
yeah,
not a fan of that. Yeah.
I get that a lot when I chat about our vultures and marabou storks. Actually, they always say that they're ugly.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too, which couldn't disagree with anymore.
Right. So vultures, favorite animal. And then could you go through a little bit of how or what brought you to working with animals?
Yeah, so it's hard to narrow it down to kind of, one experience or anything like that. I think growing up, I just kind of had this natural affinity, this natural magnetism to animals and just nature in general. I was always the kid that was outside looking at bugs. And I think actually, bugs and things in the garden were what was my first foray into animals, I would say. Mm-hmm. Just always found them interesting. And I couldn't tell you why. I was always the one that wasn't into sports like a lot of the other kids, and I was more so into the animals. So it was just kind of this natural passion that I had.
Nice. Yeah, I feel you on that, because I think if anybody's listened to my first podcast, they would have heard, like, I started from a real young age, pretty much with birds, but animals formed a huge part of my life, and it just keeps growing and going, and it gets more and more in depth as I get older. So it's pretty cool. And I think we all kind of stem from something like that, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of have this natural passion and interest in them to really get into the field and to pursue that passion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how did you get into those working with animals? So we've sort of what brought you into it, but how did you first initially start in the industry?
Right. So I guess it started with my schooling. So always from a young age, I said I was kind of into insects, and I remember wanting to be an entomologist, I think, when I was like, 7 years old. I don't even know how I was able to pronounce it at that age.
Entomologist. Wow, what a big word for the podcast. Excellent. This is what we strive for.
So I guess for people that don't know, it's the study of insects. And then it kind of migrated, over a few years into a marine biologist. Another few years went by and it was a zoologist. And that one kind of stuck for me. So I ended up pursuing that with a degree in zoology in university. And from there, I was in a location where there was a close by zoological park. Right. So it was sort of like a drive-through zoological park. And I always remember ever since I knew that it was there, I wanted to work there. And I thought it would be so cool to be able to do that during the summers while I pursued this university degree. So I applied quite a few years, didn't get it. And I think it was on my third time applying. This time I knew somebody that worked there, so I had an in. And I was able to get my first professional job with animals, which was working with birds of prey.
Nice.
Yeah. And even before that, it's funny, I never really paid much attention to birds. I think my interest always was more on the insect side, or, I kept reptiles as pets growing up. Didn't really think too much of birds until I started working with them. And wow, did that change my life.
Yeah, because all the birds ate your insects.
They did. And even some reptiles too.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. So were you doing shows quite quickly, or were you only working with display birds at the time?
So it started with display birds. We did some shows. So how we used to work our shows were we would have one person being the narrator, right? Doing all the facts for the audience. They were all mic'd up. And then we had 2 or 3 trainers that were working exclusively, the hands-on with the birds, with cues and everything like that. Right. So we always started in that narrating role. And then that's how you kind of learned your facts. You learned about the birds. You kind of knew what to expect. Yeah. And then as you got more experience with it, then you would kind of transfer into more of a hands-on role with the birds.
And how was that transition from just doing the verbal side of things to actually handling those birds and sort of being out right in front of everybody and kind of working with those birds and their behaviors?
It was wild. It was like a dream come true, to be honest with you. Right. Yeah, getting to see, I was always jealous of the other trainers getting to do that hands-on side of things. Yeah. And knowing, learning about the facts, learning about the birds, knowing what these birds are capable of, and then getting to be a part of that was incredible.
That's so cool. And I'm just thinking about it now because your accent, and some people are going to ask where you're from. So you better tell everybody where you're from.
Oh, right. Of course. Guess we kind of skipped over that. I'm from Canada.
Where about in Canada, Josh?
So I'm around Southern Ontario. So I'm about an hour just outside of Toronto.
Nice. And that's the exact word I picked up and reminded me that I needed to mention that. And that was about.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you can probably hear my accent.
That's so cool. I mean, birds of prey, for me, they're probably one of the best birds to work with, power wise and showing off to your guests and being like, look at this amazing bird. And I think working with birds of prey in the bird show that I worked in when I first started was kind of one of those adrenaline moments when that bird of prey hits that glove for the first time and you're standing in the audience or standing in front of the audience and you get that like goosebumpy moment, but you're also extremely petrified that something is going to go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of feel a little like, well, especially when you're in front of, those big shows. I think our maximum capacity for our shows were just over 1,000 people.
Right.
So in the height of summer when, the park is packed, it was, you kind of felt a little bit like a rock star working with those birds. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, right. That's so cool. I love it. And I think that's kind of also what we strive for when we do our shows is us having that feeling and us being able to present our passion and our ability to be able to educate people about the natural world and all of that. I think that's just what makes it one of the greatest jobs you could probably do.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you hear when you're showing off a behavior with that bird and the crowd roars or, laughs at a joke you made, whatever it might be, that they're engaged, they're listening, and you hope they're taking away a lot from it as well.
Yeah. So on that note of bird shows and being on stage, you've got to have an interesting or exciting story of a show or something that happened in a show that you can share.
Sure. I've probably got a few.
Yeah.
There's one that stands out for me. And I think it was mostly embarrassing on myself and the birds' part. I think we recovered pretty well, but I remember it being a very windy day. And this would have been when I was, I think, pretty new into it. This would have been in my second season working there. So I was just starting to work some of the birds in the show. And I was actually narrating this show. And we were flying a Eurasian eagle owl. Ooh. And I remember it was, like I said, a pretty windy day, and they're a pretty large bird. It was my role to call it to a T-perch right up in the middle of our show, our display area.
Right.
And I could tell when it left the release enclosure, she didn't have a great handle on the wind, and she was veering a little bit too much to the left. And I was also standing on the left side, and lo and behold, she pretty much nailed me right on. Oh. Not her fault. She just, couldn't really handle the wind. It started gusting right when she left that pen. And I think she collided both with the microphone and my chest area. And so you can imagine
a goof moment in the microphone there.
Absolutely. A very loud one. And probably a goof noise from her hitting my chest as well.
Right. Oh, wow.
And so I remember after that, she was on the ground. We both looked at each other. Her eyes were wide with embarrassment. Crowd was laughing a little bit, but she recovered well. She flew back up to the T-perch once I called her, and she handled the rest of her routine perfectly. So a true professional.
Nice. I think there's a lot of people that probably train birds or do bird shows that they can actually picture this owl flying out towards you and that gust of wind coming through. And we know exactly what they look like when
exactly
their eyes sort of tell you that, oh no, I'm not going to make it. Something's wrong. And then the wings go all wobbly and the tail starts clearing out. And then it's kind of like, okay, this is a lost cause. You're just going to have to deal with it and go with the flow.
That's right. Catch me.
Yeah, catch me. Oh, that's a cool story. And any fly-off stories?
Yeah, we were no stranger to fly-offs, as I'm sure,
right.
Many people listening can.
It's an intricate part of our job.
It is. It's a big part of the job too.
If you've never experienced a flyaway before, you haven't been doing it right.
That's right. Yeah, I remember we had a peregrine falcon named Geronimo that we used to fly, and he was incredible. But every time it was a little bit cloudy, kind of seemed to be a trigger for him to start looking around and go on a little bit of a vacation.
Right.
And so I remember him taking off during one show, it was cloudy. So I think we were almost half expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
And with a drive-through zoological park, that means they could end up in, many different enclosures.
Right.
And so I think he ended up in an enclosure with, if I remember correctly, we had giraffe. I think we had some rhinos in there as well. Everything was fine in the end, but it meant a little bit of a goose chase for us.
He pretty much landed in Africa.
He did. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. So when birds fly off, obviously being such a large park, you have quite a distance to travel to try and find them. You obviously were using telemetry, am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the best tools we could probably have in our toolkit.
Absolutely. I remember getting we would always get lots of questions after the show about, how do you keep them from flying off? And we would, talk about the training process and everything like that, and mention the telemetry as well.
Right.
But it's fascinating that we're able to use technology like that to do these bird shows with.
Right. And it's stepped into a whole new world now with like GPS tracking and location, and man, you can get it on your phone now.
Absolutely. Yeah, we made some pretty big jumps technology-wise.
It's crazy from the time standing with a radio receiver sort of hearing beep, beep, beep the whole time to now just seeing this thing flying around on your phone.
Yeah, in real time. It's
in
incredible.
Real time. Crazy. Technology just seems to bypass every imagination sometimes.
Yeah.
On the Africa note, you've done a lot of traveling. List some of traveling places that you've been to that have sort of caught your eye at the most.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's still a lot more traveling I need to do, but some of the coolest places I've been to, especially as far as, animal wise or nature, was one of which was South Africa. I also went to Namibia, both of which were incredible.
Nice.
I went to the Galapagos a couple of years ago, which was also kind of, a bucket list place for me, a dream come true.
That is really cool.
Yeah, that was an incredible trip. And another one I would say was back when I was in university, again, kind of going back to insects where all this started, I was able to take an entomology course to Vietnam. Cool. And that was also quite incredible.
Wow. Yeah, so a lot of traveling for you and a lot more traveling to go. That's amazing. I always see your social media and I'm like, where is Josh now? What is he up to?
Well, I probably won't be anywhere for the next little bit.
Thanks to
the
COVID.
Current situation. Yes. But hopefully lots more travels in the future.
COVID has really made us stick to where we have to stick to for way too long.
Yeah. More homebodies.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. How's it been, talking about COVID? How's it been for you guys up there?
It's been all right. I mean, like anywhere else, of course, we were affected.
Right.
At the moment, things have gotten a lot better. So we've moved into phase 3, which means most things are kind of open. We still have gathering limitations. I think we're still at around 50 people. So a lot of big events, especially during the summer, right, where here in Canada, it's, events everywhere you look. A lot of those
you got to grab those summer times.
Yeah, while they last. It's crazy that it's already August and we're running out of time in the summer. But yeah, so it's affected us just like everywhere else. I know in Ontario, we had some of the biggest numbers as far as in all of Canada. A lot of the other provinces ended up opening things a lot sooner than us.
Right. That's cool, because I think we're kind of on the same level as you guys are now. We've just got a different term for it. You're on a stage 3 sort of situation, and we're on a stage or level 2, where most economic things are happening, but there's limits also on the gatherings and all of that. But the ability to be able to open up our parks and our facilities has now come into play, which has been extremely exciting. So I don't know, were you guys affected quite severely when it came to the closure?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything everything shut down
Right.
for quite a while there. We were just it was a week by week kind of situation where
Right.
it was even day by day at the beginning, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, everything shut down and things slowly started opening as we kind of tried to level off the curve. As far as our zoological parks, our big one around where I live is the Toronto Zoo, and they adapted to it being mostly drive-through. So you were able to
Oh yeah.
book tickets ahead of time. And it wasn't a drive-through park beforehand, so it was a complete change for them. But they made it work, and they were able to do some really cool things with that.
Right.
And I think they were able to do that quite early because of that
Yeah, that's cool.
adaptation.
I saw some really cool social media stuff about that, and everybody was talking about that's really, jumping into the new world and taking it by the horns and kind of going, right, let's just do it. Let's do what we have to do and make sure that, we survive through this, which is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. I think there was so much uncertainty at the beginning. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of businesses, not just animal businesses or zoological operations, but everywhere kind of had to adapt to a new normal because
Totally.
nobody knew how long things would last. And I mean, we still don't really know either, right? There's still kind of a lot of uncertainty. So trying to figure out how to fit your operations with the new normal, I think, has become, the only way to survive.
Right. And if anybody told me a year ago that the world was going to go into a complete lockdown and people were going to stay home, I would have laughed.
I know. It was something you would see in a movie,
right?
Never real life.
Kind of made history, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quickly jumping back to your travels, seeing as though we got on the Corona chat.
Right.
South Africa trip, how was that for you?
Yeah. So that was, at this point, definitely a highlight of my life. So I actually left the zoological park I was talking about earlier, the kind of the drive-through park where I worked with birds of prey. I did that during my degree, my university degree I was doing. So that was a seasonal job because living in Canada, if you have outdoor operations, things are typically seasonal. But I went from, once I graduated with my zoology degree, I worked there for basically one more season, one more summer, and then I wanted to expand my horizons a little bit.
Right.
And I remember when I was young, every time I read about Africa and the biodiversity there, I was so in awe. So being able to go there, I always knew I wanted to, and I kind of figured that was the best time to do so.
Right.
So I was able to go there with the intention to focus on, obviously, the wildlife and the nature. And I was able to do a field guide course through the Field Guides Association of Southern Africa. Mm-hmm. And so that was a way for me to really expand my horizon, do something that was completely different for me, and focus on more of the guiding side of things and being out in nature and educating people that way. And it, like I said, it was a dream come true.
Yeah. And you got to experience some really cool things that I think some even people that live in this country have not had the opportunity to do.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. Like I still think back to it and some of the experiences I had, and it still blows my mind that I was able to do that. I think because I had always dreamed of going, it's still kind of hard to imagine that I was there seeing the things that I was able to see.
Yeah. What is the most memorable moment for you when you were in South Africa?
So one of my most memorable moments was actually in Namibia. So when I was in South Africa, I was mostly doing that course, the field guide course, and I was able to, with a friend of mine from Switzerland who actually also did the field guide course, we did a little week-long camping trip up in Namibia. And I remember us going to Etosha National Park, and we camped there for I think it was about 3 nights. So, about 3 days. And I remember we spent one day, it might've been our first night there. So we did quite a bit of driving, and, we went.
Namibia being Namibia, you would drive forever.
It's kind of like Canada that way, to be honest. Lots of driving. So I was definitely used to it. But I remember us having a really long day of driving, and we went and set up our campsite. And then often in Etosha, next to these campsites, they've made artificial watering holes. And they kind of have them
Right.
set up with the red lights at night, so you can kind of go watch the sunset. And typically when the sun goes down, or especially around sunrise and sunset, because it's so hot in Namibia, that's typically when you see the most action with the animals.
Yeah.
So I remember walking up to this watering hole and seeing about 100 people with their eyes glued forward. I still couldn't see the watering hole at this point, but I knew there had to be something good. Everybody with their really long telephoto lenses, all these professional looking photographers there. And I remember going up and seeing a pride of lions lazily enjoying the cooler temperatures next to the watering hole. And they all looked like they had pretty full bellies. And right next to them, 2 black rhinos, which already for me was more than I thought was even possible of seeing. And at the same time, there was a group of jackals kind of trying not to step on the lion's toes, moving around, but there was a lot of action going on. Right. And I remember asking somebody, what's happening? And there was also a juvenile elephant that was hunted by the lions probably half an hour before I got there. Right. So that's why these lions had such full bellies, and were so, content sitting next to these black rhinos. Everybody was in a good mood pretty much, other than the elephant, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember, and it was all kind of framed by, the perfect African sunset. It was just an incredible sight to see.
You can't beat that.
No, you can't.
That's really, really awesome. I know our sunsets can really take your breath away, and I got to experience some amazing sunsets when I went up into Botswana, because a lot of people believe that where we are in South Africa, we just have wild animals roaming around absolutely everywhere, like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. But yeah, it's really not like that. We're like any other place in the world where we've got a high dense population. There's not very many animals around, or large animals around. But when you go up into Africa, like Namibia, Botswana, those places, that's where you get the raw African feel, where the open spaces are just wildlife. Bump into a lion on your way to your tent or whatever.
Yeah, it's incredible for me to have been able to go there and see that side of things. I mean, I saw lots of wildlife in South Africa as well, but just both places were incredible. I definitely have to go back.
Well, you're more than welcome back anytime.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then on to maybe photography. I see you've been doing a bit of photography.
Yeah. So photography, is a bit of a hobby of mine. And I guess it's another way for me to be able to share things like nature, landscapes, wildlife.
And your travels.
And my travels, yeah. So it's almost kind of become an exclusive part of an exclusive hobby to my travels. So I don't actually do a lot of photography when I'm, here just in Canada working and things like that.
Yeah.
It's usually when I'm kind of in a new place. It's my way of exploring that.
Right. Yeah, I will say that I do kind of wait to see if you've gone away somewhere, wait to see what photos are going to pop up on social media and be like, wow, like that waterfall's amazing type of thing.
Yeah. So I guess I shouldn't say I don't do any photography in Canada, but typically in Ontario when I'm out in the other provinces and seeing new things.
Right. New experiences.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Talking about Canada again, you have a challenge that I don't think a lot of people here in South Africa or in other countries that don't experience it have ever experienced it or understand it. And that is you get quite a large dump of snow in winter.
Yeah, absolutely. So here in Canada, we get a really large amount of snow. Shoveling becomes quite second nature. You get a lot of back pain during the winter months. And obviously, like you said, kind of challenges when it comes to, zoological parks keeping animals.
Right.
So at the drive-through park, we would have pretty much seasonal enclosures, right? We would have a lot of outdoor enclosures, We kept a lot of native birds of prey, which would be able to handle those winter temperatures fine, as long as they had a ceiling that kept a lot of the snow out.
Mm-hmm.
But temperature wise, they were able to adapt, and it was quite normal for them. But we also would have our winter enclosures, which were heated throughout the winter months, and even some of the cooler fall months that we would have. So our more tropical species. And actually, the last place that I worked at with animals, it was pretty much mostly indoors. We would free fly some birds during the summer months, and we would have outdoor enclosures. But for the most part, we would have indoor enclosures were the norm, and then our seasonal outdoor enclosures. So you kind of have to adapt to, definitely the different seasons we have. And that means getting some animals out during the summertime that maybe aren't normally out, or the other way around, and having indoor winter enclosures that we had to have to move them into.
Yeah, that is something that I experienced when I was up in Minnesota. My first year that I visited the United States was a lot of the zoos that had shows, the bird shows or any animal shows, kind of stopped doing shows during the winter months because of the cold and the snow.
Right. Yeah.
Or places like Minnesota Zoo had indoor bird shows. So you'd go into a theater that's inside, and they would do a whole bird show inside there where it was all air conditioned and kept warm. So no problem there. But I can just see, I mean, I'm thinking about the park you used to work at that had a lot of African animals. Our animals, yes, down here, they do get to experience snow, but I don't think they get to experience the snow that they would if they were in Canada where you are, and the depth of the snow. So I'm sure it's quite challenging for facilities that have African animals to definitely build those large indoor places where they can keep them, or those barns where they can keep them. And I'm just thinking, you got this huge African elephant, and now you need to keep it inside for a good portion of the time. And large elephants eat a lot of food.
Yes.
So what goes in needs to come out.
Exactly. we never we actually didn't have African elephants, but we did have Asian elephants. So still a very large animal, still a lot of food and a lot of waste coming out of there. But yeah, a lot of, I mean, you kind of have to think about it, I think, as it's just a part of keeping that animal, right? You have to create a very large indoor enclosure that's able to properly house them and accommodate them, just as much as just having the animal. It just kind of becomes a part of the care. And I think that's always a concern with, people in North America keeping animals.
Yeah, for sure. I saw something really interesting, seeing as though we're on elephant dung. And there was a post, I can't remember the zoo, but it was a post about them taking elephant dung and making paper, and they would make notebooks and they would sell them in their curio shops. And it was a real hit because everybody wanted to take home elephant dung paper or books and give them as presents and all of that type of stuff. And all that money would go towards conservation, which I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot at, we didn't have that at our particular park, but I remember, my travels around the United States and things, they would have, I would see those and be quite intrigued by it, and people lining up to get it. But it's really incredible to be able to, I guess, recycle that sort of thing, and it goes back into conservation. Quite incredible.
Absolutely. I'm just keeping cognizant of the time, but what I would like to find out is, I know you've moved from the place that you are talking about, the open safari place, but what do you do now, Josh?
So right now, I'm actually prepping to go back to school.
Okay.
So I've worked with birds of prey mostly. I actually ended up, after I came back from South Africa, I worked at another more of an animal outreach program. And I did that for quite a few years, which involved a lot of travel around Canada, which became not quite sustainable for me. I was gone for about 8 months of the year, one of my years there. So it was a lot of time on the road, incredible experience, where I mostly worked with birds of prey there as well. But I really missed Africa, and I really missed being able to take people out into nature. and kind of teach them by being in that location.
Right.
So I'm going to be going back to school here in Ontario for a program that is kind of similar to that sort of thing. It's an adventure leadership kind of outdoor education, sort of that nature guide, field guide type program here in Canada.
Wow.
And I'm very excited about that because, like I said, I've been missing being able to take people out into nature and teach them about it.
Yeah.
And we've got, here in Canada, we have people that a lot of tourism is kind of based around our wildlife. We've got lots of bears that people want to come see. Moose is another big one. So being able to bring, tourists or even just people that want to learn more about that out into the wild is something that I'm going to enjoy getting back into.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds super exciting.
Yeah, very excited. Even everything from, astronomy and weather patterns, landscape, geology, it's kind of top to bottom.
All incorporated. That's very cool.
Yeah. And hopefully that'll be another way for me to kind of get back into photography as well and be able to share some more photos that way.
Yeah, you must be stoked. You must be super excited.
I am.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Josh, it has been really awesome chatting to you. And I was thinking about it. This is the first time we've actually chatted in not live, but sort of, voice wise, because we've only really chatted on text.
That's right.
So
for quite a few years.
For quite a few years. So this has been great. Hopefully the next step is I catch a flight out to Canada.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or maybe I can come back to Africa as well.
I think you should come back to Africa.
I'd like to.
That would be great. That's really cool. And I'm super keen to see what's going to be happening next in your future and all your endeavors, and super excited about all of that.
And thanks so much, Josh, for being on the show. And I'm sure if anybody's got any questions or any topics they'd like to bring up or anything they'd like to be on the show, please send an email to me. I'd love to hear from you guys. You can send it to animal.talk201@gmail.com. So drop a mail and maybe your questions could be on a podcast. Keep safe, everyone. And remember, animals are our passion. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're right. We have been talking for an hour. That is amazing.
Yeah, we could have done 2 podcasts.
Right?